I'm Jim Check. You're watching Now Media here with
Renee Merrifield.
and Beyond the Ballot. And and Beyond the Ballot, less than a week to go. Monday, decision day. You and I are going to be here right to the bitter end, just like we were for the provincial election. We're going to be here
Absolutely.
calling the ball. And it's actually, we'll talk about polls first. Let's talk about polls first. They're starting to kind of even out. And I guess the question to you is, because you were involved in elections, how much do the polls really mean, and how much of them, like, there's so many that are kind of a little different, and how many of them are kind of slanted and used as political tools as well?
Historically, polls are very inaccurate. And pretty much when telephones stopped becoming the norm, and like when you didn't have a telephone that went directly into your into your home, they stopped becoming the norm. The difficulty with polls is that they've largely been used to bandwagon. So that's a political term that's basically used to describe the phenomenon that has people feel like, well, I should vote there because that's where everyone's voting. So there is this aspect to polls that become very powerful in influencing the voter. Unfortunately, they're terribly inaccurate. I was looking at a couple of the polls just this last weekend, in which, one of them, I believe, is the Main Street poll, came out with the Conservatives ahead, and the Abacus poll came out with the Liberals ahead. But in the Abacus poll, there were twice as many above 55 age individuals that were surveyed than the Main Street poll, which had an even split all the way throughout. That's a striking number, an absolutely striking number. Oh, there we go. You've got it right in front of us. So thank you for that. And so when you actually look at each of the questions, and very few voters do that, right? Very few voters are looking at what are the questions. Very few voters are looking at what are the age groups. And I think what's the most powerful part about this Main Street poll is that it was a lot of even split amongst all of the different age groups. And what I'm hearing from, that 20 to 30-year-old is that, it's a heavy conservative vote that's taking place there.
Yeah, and that's you can look at the crowds too. Like if you look at the crowds at the Carney rallies and at the Polyev rallies, you can kind of see the mix there. I mean, it's definitely a lot younger crowds at the Polyev rallies, and then a lot, like a lot more my age group, the gray hairs, at the Mark Carney rallies. And you've seen it in some of the lineups, and some of them are really angry. That one guy's actually a meme across Canada now with the double-barreled salute there, right? He probably hasn't helped that campaign, because it's not only him though. The reaction from quite a few people in those lineups are just really, really angry, and I'm not sure where all that anger comes from. Like, it seems disrespectful to be fingering anybody, but.
And for those that haven't seen it, it's this Liberal attendee wearing the Carney button that's literally flipping off the camera or whoever is taking the photo. There were some great memes that were done, some really powerful.
We show them every day.
In which, one of them was that particular individual, and then a close-up going into the mouth of that individual's, as he was kind of, had his mouth open and fingers up, middle fingers up. And then it started showing some really, really sad and scary statistics about the younger generation, everything from, what their unemployment rate is, what their aspirations to finding a home are, et cetera. And by the end of it, I was feeling, completely disheartened. But basically, it was like, yeah, this is the voter who's going to vote for more of this. And it was a very powerful aspect. The other thing is the Privy Council report. I don't know. I mean, these are really nuanced and small kind of reports, but basically the Privy Council is Carney's office. It's the office of the Prime Minister that comes out with these reports. And it was one of the most damning reports about what 2040 looks like in Canada that I have seen yet. I don't know why the media isn't covering it, other than it is so scathing towards the Prime Minister, and it absolutely is damning in terms of what Carney released this last weekend for his platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great for wildlife either, because it says that the ones that have money will leave, and the other ones will be foraging and hunting for all the wildlife left in Canada. So it's a dystopian view of Canada, and it's like more of the same. And it is really kind of scary that I just watched Joe Warmington ask Pierre Poilievre that question: why are media outlets not picking this up? Why are they not asking this question? and it just gets no airtime because it seems pretty bad. Like you said, it came out of the Privy Council office.
Yeah. I think that the other thing that we need to take a look at is Carney's budget that came out, his costed policy plan. I know that we're going to do a deep dive, so I won't go into too much detail, but basically, it was one of the most horrific reports I've ever seen. This is not Trudeau 2.0, this is Trudeau on speed. The amount of debt that he is going to add to Canadians is absolutely astronomical. There is no plan for economic recovery. There is no plan for economic gain. One of his biggest line item increases was on tariff revenue. That is a scary statistic. You want to talk about who's behaving like Trump, it would be Carney. And then all of this chatter all over social media, where's the plan? Where's the plan? Where's the Conservatives' plan? And when it came out today, honestly, I was shocked at how positive it was. No big, massive debt, an increase in a decrease in taxation, a decrease in the cost of government, a decrease in foreign spending, and really, it's one of those that I think they waited just long enough for that eagerness, as it were, to come, to a fulminating head, as it was, and then really, when they took the lid off, it's like actually ours is better, and here's why.
Yeah, Carney's already backpedaling on his by saying, "Oh no, I'm going to have a surplus in year 5," because he's getting some grief from a lot of the financial people in Canada, just like how like a lot of people actually, like the financial, like think tank is looking at that and say this is not good for Canada, and it is really good for the wealthy in respect to that. Easy money policies drive up a lot of inflation, and that's great for people that own a lot of assets, but it's not great for the average taxpayer.
The only thing that Carney's plan has been great for so far are, people who already own, people who already have businesses, and really Carney. Carney's own businesses are basically are the only ones that are going to be benefiting from his plan. I can't even imagine what the response to the Privy Council would be, because this is, Carney's plan is just more of the same. The only plan that really has the change agent necessary, and that's the economy really coming back to life, is Pierre Poilievre's. And honestly, it's in black and white, and the economists are the ones that are warning us against Carney's plan, and he's trying to backpedal, as you mentioned, Jim. But I just think there's just no way. There's just no way you can go back from this.
Yeah, and then some of the cuts are cutting consultants, like $25 billion, lies. 25. You got to say that a few times, because I ask people how much you think we spend on consultants. They're just like 50 million. I'm just like 25 billion. They're not a B. They're $25 billion in consulting, and then also talking about defunding the English speaking branch of the CBC. But Peter Menzies, a well-known, critically acclaimed media person in Canada, wrote a piece that is getting no press either, in that he said, on Monday, we vote for either a free and independent media or media dies in Canada.
Yeah, and we have to really look at the role of the media in this election. We just talk about bandwagoning. It doesn't matter if it's CTV or CBC. As I'm watching these guys, it's been really quite slanted in Carney's favor. I'm really quite annoyed at this point with just how much they've done in terms of propping Carney up and really giving him a free pass. And then you look at some of the independents, and like them or hate them, Rebel Media and Drea Humphreys really got a bad rap. Throughout the debate, I guess debrief after the fact, in which basically Rosie Barton had propagated some mistruths. CBC later backtracked and said, actually, this was not true, and had this little disclaimer. But when you look at how much they bashed the independent media in that opportunity, it was quite scathing, and it was quite negative. And I mean, that just gives you a small example of how much the mainstream media are propping up one party over another. And I think it's a very dangerous part in history for us to be enduring right now. And I really hope that some of the private enterprise come behind, the independents, just like Now Media, and really start to take a look at how do we get these moving forward in a more powerful way, and make sure that they're alive, not just for today, but for in perpetuity.
And what you said there is very, very important, because what CBC did, Rosemary Barton did, is that she didn't attack Rebel News, which maybe she had a problem with. Like Rebel News, I'm not a big fan of, but she didn't just attack Rebel News. She lumped all independent media in with them. She just basically said independent media is basically garbage. And that is such an unfair statement, because not all of us are privileged enough to get our salaries paid for by the CBC or by the government. And again, this article, I recommend people go read it. And it says, "Vote wisely, Canada. The fate of a free press depends on the outcome of this election." And I just want to read, Peter Menzies is a respected Canadian journalist and media policy commentator. He was the vice chair of the CRTC, and he was the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Calgary Herald. And he's won a bunch of awards and accolades. So he's not saying this. He's a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. And it really matters. And media, a free and independent media, is the foundation of a strong democracy. And he said, when all is said and done, the future of a free independent press and the public trust in it is on the line next Monday. It will live or it will die.
And we have been warned, not just by Menzies, but by many who have, who have come and spoken out against, what the Liberal government did over the course of the last 10 years, how they eroded the freedom of the press, how they eroded what could be shared, and how they have injured independent media. So we absolutely need to make sure that that this is undone. And Carney nor Jagmeet Singh has made any mention that they would be the ones to do it. In fact, they have both promised to double CBC funding rather than defunding, which is really where we need to go from here.
And we'll talk about it more tomorrow, but the Polyev platform does say that they're going to repeal Bill C-18, which one we've been fighting against, and there's a few other bills that are going to go with it. Plus, there's some support in there for local independent journalism. A couple of things in that platform that aren't in there that the Liberals accuse them of being in there. There's no cuts to dental. There's no cuts to healthcare. There's no cuts to seniors. Actually, there's a benefit to seniors where they're going to get $34,000 tax-free. But we'll go into that in bigger detail tomorrow. OECD, what's that?
And I also want to make mention, because there's a lot of Twitter chatter this weekend about the home equity tax. Trudeau actually was the first to speak about the home equity tax. You look at their budget, they absolutely are not budget, but their policy and their plan. They absolutely are going to have to find new ways to tax us. Home equity has been talked about by the federal Liberals for the last decade. Carney has definitely been one that has mentioned that in the past, and that being a way that they can actually increase. When reporters have been asking about this, they have not gone on record to say that this is not part of where they will go. The only party to go on record saying that they will not be looking at a home equity tax is, again, the Conservatives. So I just want to make mention, and I know we'll talk about this again tomorrow, but I did hear some chatter about some reporters saying, well, I talked to an insider inside the Liberal tent, and they said that, and it's like, okay, anonymous stuff is just not gonna hold water for me.
And that's so important, because the majority of Canadian wealth is in real estate. Like, that is the truth of the matter in Canada. Like, the majority of our wealth is in our real estate. And also, Mark Carney is a big fan of the United Kingdom, and they do have something there called an inheritance tax, which is part of that, and passing that principal home off to your kids too, right? So we can talk a lot about that tomorrow. OECD, look at Canada now in second place from the bottom. We're beating Luxembourg now.
Oh, fantastic. I just think Luxembourg wasn't always mentioned.
There you go. Oh my, right? I don't know how you hide from these, right? So
and you guys, this is like, the OECD has us in dead last over the course of the last decade. But what's even scarier is that they have us dead last in the next 20 years. So they do not see, if we continue on this trajectory, they do not see anything changing. So we, this is not just a horrible indictment of where we are today, but it is a very, very scary warning of where we're about to go over the course. And it doesn't matter if it's the Privy Council sounding an alarm bell about what 2040 looks like, whether it's the OECD saying, "Hey guys, you are on a bad trajectory, and it's going to get worse, and here's how." But we need to heed these warnings, and we absolutely need to change trajectory now.
Part of that is like our oil and gas, suppression of our oil and gas. What's not in Mark Carney's budget is oil and gas.
Not a single
no
word.
Pipeline in there, right? What's
Not
that?
a single word that says pipeline. You can Google, you can search the entire document, not a single word or mention of pipelines.
We're going to play this clip here from Mark Carney here. We're going to play this clip here. Go ahead and play that, Ronald.
Vous dites que vous avez un plan
You say
responsable.
that you have a responsible plan, but at the same time, when someone like Trevor Trooms is saying of your plan that the fiscal direction you're proposing is unsustainable for Canada potentially, what do you think of that? Well, I have a lot of experience as an economist and as an economic manager.
There you go. So just trust them. It's all good. So now, after a couple of those questions, now he's starting to backpedal and saying, "Oh no, there's a surplus in year 5."
And Trevor Tome, I mean, that economist, he is amazing. Like, you want to talk about someone who has been right about a lot of different things? That's Trevor Tome. If for him to say, and Trevor Tome is an economics professor. For him to say, like, I have a lot of experience, trust me, that has got to be the most ridiculous thing ever, especially when he has been wrong about the last 5 predictions made in Canada, and he's been dead wrong. I can't even imagine why he would say such a thing when he has been so erroneous in his predictions to date.
Well, I'll say this one more time. I said it so many times, it's trying to see if I can get this point to sink in for some people. Mark Carney was Canada's economic advisor for the past 4 years, which is basically tax policy and financial policy, because that's what Canada's a tax collector. So he's advising on tax policy and revenues. At the same time, he's representing Brookfield Asset Management and advising them to dodge $5 billion in taxation at the same time. This is at the same time. So on one hand, he's figuring out how to get more taxation out of the taxpayer. On the other hand, he's figuring out how to get dodge taxes to enrich himself and Brookfield. I mean, those are in direct conflict with each other.
Absolutely. The other thing is that he has not admitted where he has actually filed his taxes. So we don't even know if he's filed Canadian taxes. We don't know if he's paid Canadian taxes. I take huge exception to having someone who's parachuting in, who hasn't been a part of us over the course of the last 10 years and has only profited himself over the course of the last 10 years, in large measure. And, yes, Jim, you bring up the billions of dollars of tax evasion, what Obama called as one of the biggest tax scams of our decade. And he's basically in the center of it, and making sure that he's profiting from it and profiting from the decisions that he is advising towards. That is the biggest insider trading ever. I cannot understand how Canadians can hear these things and not be more incensed about them and not be more inclined away from him. Other than it seems like the younger generation has definitely heard loud and clear that there is some huge conflict of interest, and that Carney is not someone who is going to help them on their road to success.
Think about this, though. He's there as the economic advisor, advising on tax policy. They floated the tax policy to increase the capital gains inclusion rate. They floated that while he was there advising. So for the regular taxpayer, he says, how do we get more revenue? How do we get more revenue? We go after people's capital gains. That's how we get more revenue. At the same time, he's advising Brookfield to dodge $5 billion in tax. And not just Brookfield, there's a couple other companies that he's dodged taxes on. So how can somebody say that take him serious? Like, how, as an accountant, I'm asking all the other accountants out there, at the same time, he has a fiduciary responsibility acting as an economic advisor. He's acting as our advisor. Here's how we get more money out of Canadians. we tax their capital gains. We increase the inclusion rate. And at the same time, we continue to evade taxes. Why not take some of those $5 billion and so we don't have to do that? Right.
Yeah. And, right now I've seen people like Neil Young and Mike Myers, advocate for Carney. Yeah. To date, I have not seen a single financial advisor, a single economist, a single, finance executive come out in support of Carney and his plan. So far, I have seen two, not one, but two different letters of support for Pierre Poilievre's and his plan and his economic strategy. Two letters signed by over 30 of such said individuals on each letter. And so far, I've seen, the economists hammering Carney for where he's taking us over the course of the next 4 years. So I don't know. I don't know if this is just the biggest liberal propaganda. I don't know if mainstream media is having, as huge of effect as they are, or how, people have actually come to the conclusion that they have. And here we go back to where we started, and that is, where are the polls wrong? And are there more people like you and I who do own properties, who, do own businesses, who are saying there is just no way that, that Carney is the path forward for us? It is a path further into oblivion and further into economic disrepair.
I mean, both of us have children. I have grandchildren, and I worry about the future of Canada. I mean, it's getting worse and worse instead of better and better for our youth, for sure. And that's the thing. So we do have a couple of endorsements here to talk about. Former Premier Gordon Campbell has come out and has spoken on behalf of Pierre Poilievre and endorsed Pierre Poilievre. Actually, I'm supposedly going to get a chance to talk to Gordon Campbell here in today or tomorrow or something like that too. So they're trying to arrange that. So that'd be great. Any thoughts on Gordon Campbell's endorsement?
I think it's a powerful one. Gordon Campbell is known as a moderate. He's known as a centrist. His policies were far more, I would call them classical liberal. And that would be where he would feel comfortable. If I could equate him to a former liberal leader federally, it would be more in the Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin era. That's where he would feel very comfortable. For him to come out with such a glowing endorsement of Pierre Poilievre, I think is a damning message about Carney and where Carney is going to take us. Gordon Campbell's smart. He is incredibly well learned. He is incredibly educated, and so for me that was a huge one. And I liked how Rosemary Barton was trying to put the screws to him and say, like, you didn't really say Pierre Poilievre. And by the end, Gordon Campbell's like, yeah, that's why Pierre Poilievre is the only way you can go on this election. So in the end, he definitely gave that glowing endorsement in that direction.
Well, it turns out Christy Clark is going to be in town tomorrow, and she's here to endorse Stephen Fuhr.
Yeah, and that one, obviously she went for the leadership of the Liberals and was unsuccessful. She definitely has her stripes and is putting them there. But she was not a Carney fan. Basically she was coming out and saying, that we needed to go in a different direction, and she was the only one that had that centrist mode that would take us there. I think she's right. I think she was the only centrist or the only true centrist that we had on that Liberal docket. And unfortunately, caught in a lie. There's no other way to say it now. We talk about lying. Carney, oh my chicken! If that guy, says one more thing that is a blatant lie, I'm just going to lose my marbles. But he doesn't apparently have the same measure that's held to him as was held to Christy Clark. And coming out in support of Stephen Fuhr, Stephen is a really nice man. He was a great, an MP for us, very approachable, very quiet, not really very engaged with the community, et cetera. Hasn't been very engaged with the community since. So, his name on a ballot is a little bit of a flyer there, but, polling 338, Canada has him neck and neck with Tracy Gray. So we'll see where that one ends up. Will Christy Clark's endorsement do anything for him? Probably not. I think his fumble on, at the All Candidates forum, and I hope that we get.
We're going to play that clip for you. We're going to play that.
Oh,
okay. We're trying to get Christy Clark to come on as well, because Gordon Campbell, I believe, has agreed to. So it'd be great to get both of them on to talk about their endorsements. We've asked Stephen Fuhr to come on several times. Not so lucky there. But we'll play that clip and then we'll talk about Stephen Fuhr. We'll play just the second clip, Rommel, not the first one from Mark Carney. This one.
Stephen, do you believe carbon taxes are an effective way to reduce emissions?
The experts say it is. Every expert on the planet has said it was the most cost-effective way to do this, and unfortunately, 38 or 39% of the Conservative Party made so much noise about this that it became unpalatable. And so, it doesn't mean that we're going to abandon it. It just means it's going to have to be applied in a different way. And
there you go. He got national coverage for that.
Yeah, 3 things about this clip. Number 1, he is dead wrong about his poll. It was not 38% of Conservatives. It was 74% of all Canadians were against carbon tax. So, he got his statistic absolutely incorrect. The second thing is watch Tracy Gray's face. She knows that he is absolutely burying himself, and what you don't do when your political adversary is burying himself is try and save him. So I thought she did a great job of just holding her tongue and not saying anything. But number 3, when a candidate tells you what they are and who they are, believe them. And, he is basically saying, we're not going to go away with carbon tax. We're just going to bring it back in a different way. Absolutely, unequivocally, this is true. And I have not believed Carney from the word go. You cannot read his book Values and then see what he is doing today and believe that it is in any way, shape, or form anything other than trying to win an election, and will absolutely come back to bite Canadians afterwards.
Yeah, I was going to play the clip of Mark Carney bragging of how, he took away the carbon tax and how Canadians should be thankful to him. But then Stephen Fuhr comes out and says it was Conservatives that got it done because they made it unpalatable. So that is, to me, it's always been a win for the Conservatives. But, Liberals try to take it and own it as well. But poll turnout, that's the last thing I think we'll touch on today. Poll turnout, record here, 7.3 million in the advanced turnout. And you and I have talked about this before, and advanced turnout typically is asking for, record numbers is typically looking for change.
Yeah, and advanced polls typically are looking for change. That would prove true when it came down to the United States election. The advanced polls were very strong. There was a lineup of people waiting. Some people believe this is because Kamala was such a compelling candidate. It turned out to be a Trump vote. And so do I see that again? I was asking my husband, who went on day 1 and waited an hour and a half. And obviously there's going to be a slant to that particular riding because it's currently held by Dan Albus. It's a conservative riding, and it typically is. But he said everyone in that lineup was voting conservative. He was trying to just to kind of have casual conversations about who people are voting for. But it was pretty much everyone was conservative that was lined up that day.
Yeah, and our voting base is about 29 million, according to Stats Canada. So that's, that's a big percentage, 25% in the advanced polls, really. That's pretty impressive. And then we don't get out the full, it's usually 70% of the people that actually show up to vote. We may get more this time around, but.
It's usually less than 70%. It's usually in the 60s.
It's actually 68, 65, and then I was being generous. But
I'm always so disappointed when I see how many people actually voted, because I feel it's like huge compulsion. Is it because they put it on a long weekend where we actually have the days off, and voting day is on a Monday, on a work day? I'm not sure. Is it because it's it was people are eager to get out there and vote? I'm not sure what the reason is. It will be very interesting, and a lot will be made about these early polling numbers. But the only thing I can say is that I do know that all my kids, and that's 5 of them with all their significant others, were getting their voting cards and making sure that they got out and voted. And they are, for the most part, they're voting for change. They're voting for that $100,000 off of their purchase of a home. They're voting for, jobs that they can actually, afford to live on. They're voting to try and lower the age at which they feel like they can actually have children. Because right now it's a very, very real, reality for them that they don't feel like they could ever afford to have kids. So they're definitely voting against that, meme that was scattered across on the weekend of that, middle-aged boomer giving the finger to what this generation feels like right now.
And as Now Media, what we want people to know is that you need to vote. This is your chance to say how you want the country to progress in the next 4 years. And it is so important to exercise that right to vote. And it's great that your kids are all voting, mine are all voting. And it's how can you educate them? And it's listening to the other side as well, instead of just listening to one side. Listen to both sides. And that's how you're going to start to understand issues better, instead of just hearing one side and then blocking out the other sides. It's such an important time, because the only time politicians, no slagging against politicians, but they really want to listen when they need you, right? They need your vote, right? So that's the time when their ears are open. So that's the time that you get to exercise that right to vote.
Yeah, and luckily right now, when you look at parties, the incumbent is always going to run on their record, right? What have we done for you? The scary part is that right now, Carney's not even running on Trudeau's record. Carney's trying to say, no, I'm different than Trudeau. Unfortunately, he produced a costed policy platform that was done by Trudeau before he left office, and was basically done by Trudeau's people, I should say, and has an exponential accelerator to more of the same. We have the other 2 parties that have done costed platforms as well. Really, the only one that gets us back to a balanced budget and to a strong economy is the Conservative platform right now. So you can, an incumbent is supposed to vote on their record. They're trying hard to have us forget what their record is right now, which is ironic, considering that should be the strongest thing that they have. And we've got the Conservatives who are really having us, focus on change and being change. And their platform and the costed nature of their platform does show us that truly they would get us there.
And again, I'll just remind people as well, our number one export that everybody wants in Canada, like from us, our number one export is energy. Alberta and Saskatchewan combined for energy are the leading contributors to our GDP. It beats Ontario. Energy or oil and gas is the leading contributor to GDP if you just talk about an industry. Alberta's oil and gas does that. It dwarfs British Columbia. It's $90 billion. And British Columbia's 2 leading industries are mining and forestry, both in trouble, are less than $10 billion. Both of those industries in British Columbia are in trouble because of bad policy. And there's no denying it. Talk to the companies, 20 years to get a mine into place. And then Canfor and companies like that are leaving British Columbia and investing elsewhere because they say British Columbia is not a viable place to invest money.
Yeah, the head of Pembina, she basically said, we came to BC because of policy, and we're leaving BC because of policy. They're not even mincing words. They're not even letting anyone doubt why things have changed. In attending one of the mining association's events, you could walk around and ask, where are the investor dollars? They're like, not in Canada and not in BC. It just takes too long for approvals, and there's too much risk involved in getting those approvals through. It's too politically charged. So, you look at those, and, forestry is in an absolute chaotic state, and, further tariffs that have been labored onto them. And, honestly, the companies that have gone south are thanking their lucky stars that they're down there, and they're in these nice tax havens that they've settled themselves into, and it's scary times for those Canadian companies who find themselves still here.
And then people sometimes ask the question, well, why doesn't anybody speak up? Well, here's how it goes. So when the government gets formed, they don't want to say anything because it is, well, it'll get better. It can't be that bad. And then they hope and then they say things, and then time goes by, and then they get a little bit more frustrated, and they're just like, hey, this is bad. Until it gets so bad, then they say their frustration, but they're already gone. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's too late at that point.
Yeah, and Jim, I am someone who definitely feels the sting of having used my voice to speak out for Canadians, to speak out for British Columbians, to speak out for the next generation. And, the amount of attack that I get labored on, whether it's myself or whether it's my business. And, right now we are the largest provider of affordable housing in Kelowna. So it's like, I don't know how much more we can do with respect to that, but definitely, there's definitely a backlash that happens. But if we don't speak out, we lose the ability to complain, right? And not even lose the ability, but we need people to actually do the work and understand policy and understand the impact, and then be able to speak about what it's going to look like.
Yeah, the Liberals that have you believe that speaking out, like yourself and myself do, that it's like it hurts Canada. No, we speak out because we love Canada. We love Canada. That's why we speak out, because we want it to be better. It's not because we want it to be worse. We want it to be better. And the only way we can be better is if we're honest with ourselves.
Yeah, I love Canada, and I want all of our kids to stay. I want them to find their hope in their future the same way, that I did here in this country. So I definitely am a big proponent of how can we get the hope back.
I believe this is one of the greatest countries in the world, but it's not entitled to a select few. It's entitled to all of us. And that means sometimes we have to change the government. Excuse me.
Absolutely.
Forever. But
yeah,
tomorrow we'll get together and we'll do that whole costing of both those plans. We'll look at the Liberal plan and the Conservative plan. I don't know if we want to dive into the NDP plan at all. I haven't seen the NDP plan. Have you?
No, and there's been very little made about it. I don't think it's very comprehensive, and I think it's just more of the same.
So, anyway, there's the two plans to look at. But I do thank you for coming on today and getting through it. And we have a busy next few days for sure. And we'll be here April 28th with the results, Renee and I. And it'll be an interesting day for sure.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun one.
And we thank you for watching Now Media.